Hey everyone, Anthony here, and today I'm talking about my favorite Irish whiskey to pair with cigars. Let's get started. So when I say Irish whiskey, what do you think of? I bet you're thinking of Jameson, maybe Tullamore, Bushmills, which all have excellent expressions. I thoroughly enjoy them myself. But when I think of Irish whiskey to go along with cigars, I think of Yellow Spot Irish whiskey. So a friend of mine who's a big cigar enthusiast introduced me to Yellow Spot some years ago. He knew I love to pair cigars with different spirits and occasionally an Irish whiskey. And he asked me, have you ever tried Yellow Spot? And I honestly, at the time, I've never even heard of Yellow Spot. So of course I had to go do some research. And by research, I mean I had to try it for myself. You know, my friend knew I was a big fan of Middleton whiskey. So Middleton and I have a very long relationship. A friend of mine used to go to Ireland every year, and he knows I love to pair spirits and cigars. And at the time, Middleton whiskey was not readily available in the United States. So he would bring a bottle of Middleton whiskey back for me from Ireland every year when he visited his family. So my friend, again, knowing that I love to pair cigars, said, if you like the Middleton whiskey, this comes out of the same famed legendary distillery, this Yellow Spot. So before we get into tasting notes of the Yellow Spot, let's talk about the process. You know, the Spot Whiskey Distillery has different expressions. They have green spot, blue spot, yellow spot, red spot, and even gold spot. So although I enjoy all the different expressions from the Spot Whiskey's collection, I have to say Yellow Spot for me is the best Irish whiskey to pair with cigars. And I think it's about the process. It's a 12-year-old Irish whiskey, and it's aged in 3 different oak barrels, starting with American bourbon casks, Spanish sherry casks, and then Malaga casks. And if you know what Malaga is, it's actually a fortified wine from Spain, very similar to port. And for me, I think that's what adds the dimension and layers of complexity and flavor notes that you don't normally get out of an Irish whiskey when it comes to the Yellow Spot. And speaking of different tasting notes and complexity, you know, to the nose for the aroma of this whiskey. The notes that jump right out at me, there's nutmeg there, there's peach there for sure, and there's honey. And then on the palate, there's definitely a pronounced honey note to it, and there's an oakiness to it. And that makes sense considering it's aged in 3 different oak barrels. There's definitely notes of nutmeg for sure on the palate, but it's interesting. It has chocolate notes and kind of coffee notes to it. They're kind of like in the background. That leading note is definitely that honey, nutmeg, but the back end notes are coffee and chocolate, which is really interesting. So I think that whole process of the 3 different oak barrels really adds depth and layers of flavors. And when we talk about depths and layers of flavor, you know, we try to accomplish that in the cigars that we smoke. And that's what we want out of the premium cigars that we smoke. So today, I chose the Oliva Melanio Maduro. So the reason why I chose the Oliva Melanio Maduro to go along with this Yellow Spot was I think it has really pronounced coffee notes for sure. To me, it has malted chocolate. It's a San Andreas wrapper, which we know what San Andreas brings to the table. There's that cocoa, there's that coffee note to run alongside this Yellow Spot. And the tobacco on the inside is Nicaraguan filler and binder, and it predominantly comes from the Jalapa region in Nicaragua. And Jalapa tobacco tends to bring aroma and sweetness to a blend. So it's nice, and it also has spice, which is also very nice, because this actually has that oaky spice to it, the Yellow Spot does, and the complement between the two, I think, works perfectly. You know, we talk about when we do pairings, we want contrast, but we also want something to complement each other. And these both have those unique qualities. They have chocolate, they have coffee, right? They both do. There's spice from the cigar, a subtle spice. Again, to me, it's more of a back end spice. The front note is definitely kind of sweet, coffee, chocolate notes. And it's kind of cutting through those notes, those pleasant notes, which is a great thing, of the sweetness that I'm getting from the Yellow Spot in that aging process for sure. But the spice factor that I'm getting is predominantly from the cigar. But there's our contrast. We talk about contrast and complement and how they dance on your palate. back and forth. And you know, when you have a great pairing, I always say you almost get lost in the pairing. You get lost in your thought process of where you're really getting these flavor notes from, because they pair well together based upon how they run alongside each other and complement each other, but also how they contrast each other. And I think without that spice factor that I'm getting from the cigar, I think it would be too sweet of a pairing if the cigar was just all about sweet notes. Even though tobacco from Jalapa is traditionally sweet, there's definitely spice to this Serie V Melanio Maduro. San Andreas, even though it's known for its cocoa and kind of coffee notes, San Andreas wrapper, especially from higher primings, definitely has spice to it too. It's just not the leading note of it. But you know, you need that to go along when you're talking about a whiskey that has, 12 years of age on it. It's aged in 3 different oak barrels. So every time it's put into a different barrel, it's picking up different tasting notes, if you can imagine that. Bourbon barrels, sherry casks, right? And then Malaga, right? So all those barrels add different dimensions of flavors. So maybe that backdoor sweetness, that honey note, I'm getting it from the last process, maybe, the Malaga. That process in that barrel makes this whiskey extremely unique. And then when it comes to pairing cigars, like I chose the Melanio Maduro, but you could choose anything that has a spice factor, but also maybe bring some natural sweetness to the table. So another cigar that I think would pair extremely well with the Yellow Spot is the San Cristobal Revelation. It has a Sumatra wrapper. It has earthiness, but it has that sweet cedar note to it as well, right? That is another cigar I would definitely lean on. Or maybe the La Roma de Cuba Edition Especial. That has a Habano wrapper on there. There's leather, there's spice. It'll actually even cut the sweet notes of the Yellow Spot even more so, but it does have kind of subtle sweetness in the background. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for balance and flavors that complement each other. And I think these two complement each other extremely well. So I want to thank you for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, but before we depart, make sure you hit that like button, you smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you here next time.